Welcome to the Indianapolis franchise here on MLB The Show 23. We are here at Draft Day here in Season 1 for the first year player draft, and I am very, very excited. Our AA affiliate did very well. We actually won the Texas League in the first half. The AAA team not doing so great, and the MLB team looks like over almost 30 games under 500 as a whole. And going into draft season, looking at the month of June, we ended up ending the month of June with a 11-game losing streak and then lost the first game of July. So 12 straight losses here for the Indianapolis Arrows, but we did bounce back in the next game, won 5-3 versus the Dodgers, then dropped 3 of the next 4. So you can just kind of see how the MLB level is going. Well, the exciting part of this episode is the draft, and the first step to the draft now is adding guys to your draft queue. The first guy I have lined up as our number one guy is Ryan Hester, a 19-year-old pitcher. We got to see him play as a prep player, and he was actually pretty good. So I am going to have him at the top here. I love his ratings. Right now, our scouts have him as number 4 ranked in the draft, but I think he should be ranked number 1. If we would have scouted everybody at the top, I think he would have ended up being at least 1 or 2. Manny Valdez is going to be second, and he is another guy we saw play a couple of years ago, and we've been scouting him since he's been an 18-year-old. He has been very, very good. 2 years at the JUCO level, and he shows that he can be a very good player. I do want to put Ryan Hester a little bit above Valdez, though. That's just my opinion. The next guy in our queue is going to be Ray Gonzalez. We have him scouted 60% of the way, but I think he is an amazing, amazing player at short. Now, one thing about him is that his bat is going to need to grow. It's going to need to get better, but his fielding right now is elite for a prep player. I mean, elite. He could be the best defensive prep player right now in this entire draft, and that's why we have him so high. But let's talk about the guy with the highest ceiling and the guy that will probably be the best pro right now, right away. And it's Orlando Quintana out of Miami. He was born in Illinois. He ended up going to the University of Miami, and he is probably the closest thing to the MLB right now in this draft. He has maybe a lower ceiling than other prep players, but being a 71 to 76 overall and 80 to 85 potential guy, he's going to be very, very good. The best hitter as a prep here in this draft is Willie Feliz. He has the power to be possibly like a 30 to 40 home run guy at the MLB level. Maybe even you're pushing 45 home runs at the MLB level. That's what his projection is. But I think he's going to need some development. He's going to start with probably a lower overall, and he's going to need some development, but that doesn't bother me because he can also play in the outfield as well. Now let's talk about one of the oldest prospects in this draft, and that's Bay Miller. I don't think I would select Bay Miller with our first round pick, but if he slips, it's a good chance that we could take him. He went to Penn State for college. He's going to be a solid B potential, but coming in at 23 years of age, he's probably going to be somewhere between 69 and 76 overall, which is actually a pretty good starting point for a 23-year-old. The next guy we have on the list is Douglas Lawson. Lawson is pretty good. We don't really have much film on him, but we at least know that he's going to be a solid player and a guy that can develop, but he could start in the 50s overall. Along with the next guy, Alonzo Wilcox. We don't know too much about him, but he is on our list here, and if I see that he maybe falls in the draft, we have him ranked at 39. His MLB rank is about 50, so we'll see what he does. And then the projected number 1 overall pick is Johnny Ewing. We didn't even decide to scout him at all because I was looking at, our top 4 players as guys that could possibly slip. So the draft begins, and the Pittsburgh Pirates have the number 1 overall pick, and they will draft with their first pick Rolando Bellinger, who we did not scout at all. Our scouts have him ranked at number 2, and he's MLB ranked at number 2, so I guess the Pirates did their job, drafted a guy who was projected to go up there and maybe is that good. he goes number 1. So Ewing does not go number 1, even though he's the MLB ranked number 1 player. But the second team picking in this draft is the Washington Nationals, and they select our top guy in our queue in Ryan Hester. I really loved Hester, but we already see right now he is injured. So his doctor exam came back injured. And with the third pick, the Wranglers have the third pick, and they decide to draft Matthew Capps, who opted out of his doctor exam. We don't know if he is healthy or not. He went to JUCO for 1 year, and he looks like a pretty good player, but we don't really exactly know. I guess we'll have to find out later after the signing period how good he ends up being. So now we're here at our pick, and let's just see who went after the top 3. Manny Valdez went at number 4. Douglas Lawson went 6. Chester Raymond went number 7. So here we are at our selection, and our top 2 guys are Orlando Quintana, the third baseman that plays for the U. He is, like I said, probably the highest floor right now in this draft altogether. Or Ray Gonzalez, the young prep shortstop, excellent defensive shortstop. Where do we go? We decide with our first overall pick in this series to go after Ray Gonzalez, the 18-year-old prep shortstop who is an amazing defensive player and could be an elite shortstop at the MLB level. I personally think that this kid could end up being one of the greatest defensive shortstops in the game when he gets up to the MLB level, and it shows. I mean, right now he is very, very polished in the field. His bat will need to develop, but I think that can come around. We had him draft ranked at number 14. Our scouts did. He was the number 27th according to the MLB rankings, but I think he has a very, very high ceiling, and he can develop into something very, very nice. Benjamin Pedroza, who we scouted a little bit, he went number 10, a couple of picks behind us. Orlando Quintana dropped down to 15, so he stayed around. The rest of the first round looked like this. Babe Miller, the 23-year-old out of Penn State, went number 19. And then Steven Traynor, who we were scouting before, I thought he was going to be a lot better than what he was. He goes to 23. Willie Feliz goes to Atlanta at 24. And then Johnny Vaccaro, Coleman Valentin, 2 guys that we were scouting as well. They went at the end of the first. Our next pick is here at number 43 in the second round, and we have a couple of guys in our draft queue that are decent, but I don't think anybody that I'm like super blown away with that I want to get with this pick. We have a couple of guys still listed here, but all of these guys are pretty much draft ranked in the 100s. So I'm not going to reach on a guy that is at with pick number 43 with a guy that's ranked in the 100s. So what I decide to do with this pick is trust our scouts. So we decide to go after a couple of guys here that our scouts have at least ranked in the top 40. So at 43, there's a guy here named Dan Nunez, an 18-year-old lefty, and we will decide to go after him with our second round pick. Dan Nunez, we got to see him play once at a Perfect Game Showcase, and he has shown that he has really, really developed as far as going from being a junior to being a senior in high school. And one thing I like about him is that he is a lefty and he throws a very hard fastball. Like his velocity on his fastballs are really, really good. We don't know what his pitches are right now, but I think that he's a guy that can develop. Now on to our next pick, the competitive balance round B, number 74 in the draft. We also have pick number 80 coming up. So with these 2 picks, I think I want to just draft guys that I know that just can develop in the organization, and I want another young prospect. You can kind of see the trend that we're going with in this draft. So with this selection, we end up going with Jose Angeles, who is an 18-year-old relief pitcher, and he is number 64 ranked in the draft. MLB had him at 71. We decide to trust our scouts again, and he moved up a couple of slots after a couple of guys dropped, but we will see if that pays off to get a relief pitcher with our third pick. But the reason why I picked him with this pick is because I like some guys still in this draft at 6 picks later at number 80 that I thought we could still, get some good value out of. Eric Kramer was one of those guys, but we have him draft ranked at 100. Torey Manuel is not ranked, but we have him ranked at 120. And then there was Elvis Guzman, but I wasn't so sure about him since our draft rank was pretty close to the MLB. Usually those guys don't end up panning out. But one guy I did discover here is Steven Benitez. Steven Benitez was the teammate of Orlando Quintana, and we decide to draft him. You can see Quintana playing at third base here in these highlights, but Benitez is one of those guys, a really, really high floor, actually a high floor, and maybe not the highest of ceilings, but he has that college experience. He has the development. We know that he's going to be a player right now that can come in and contribute at the AA right away, but probably even at the AAA level right away. And looking at what his potential is, a ceiling of 83 potential, but a floor of 69. And then his overall, a floor of 66 and a ceiling of 80. So he could come in the 70s overall right away and be, pretty polished as a shortstop. So with our 4th round pick, we have the number 110th pick. Now we're in the 100s. There's a couple of guys I'm considering. One is Rafael Rodriguez, who was ranked in the upper 100s here, and Aiden Grant. Aiden Grant is an interesting prospect, and I had him pegged on our queue because I love that as a 21-year-old, he could possibly have a 91 potential. He will probably start out in the 60s overall, but with this selection, we will select him. Now, he fell in the draft because he was an Oregon pitcher, and this year, in the last 2 years, Oregon hasn't had a great college baseball squad, but the thing is, I think that he may be a shining star with that team, and I think that he could possibly be a guy that can move up in the organization. We just need pitching prospects right now. We don't have many of them. So adding a 21-year-old, has that college experience. He is a junior. He could possibly be a high potential. I like that his floor is 74 potential because that's actually not too bad, because right now we have one B potential prospect in our entire organization. So he will probably be in like one of the highest rated potential guys right now. So with our 5th round pick, we have 2 more picks left. We decide to actually just take a flyer on a guy, and we decide to go on Edmund Wade. We have 0 film on him. We're basically just going off of what our scouts are saying, and I think they're hearing that Edmund Wade could be a guy that could surprise a lot of people in this draft. The MLB has him ranked at 141, and he's 19. So if he's a C potential guy at 19, he'll at least have a few years to develop. With our final selection, I talked about him a little bit earlier, but Torey Manuel has been the only guy who has stayed in our draft queue. He was not ranked according to the MLB, and he's 120 according to us. So I think we're getting excellent value here with our last pick. Usually what I like to do with our last pick is just take an 18-year-old and a guy that has possibly high potential. But I like Manuel a lot. At 18 years old, I think that he could possibly be a guy that could be our AA closer right away and maybe surprise a couple of guys in our organization. So our draft, I think, was really, really good. I think we may have taken a little bit of chance going with Ray Gonzalez over Orlando Quintana, but I like Gonzalez a lot as an 18-year-old. I would figure the reason why I did draft him is because at 18 years old, if he has 4 years of development, is he better at 22 than Orlando Quintana is right now at 22? And I would have to say yes. So we're going to focus on getting Gonzalez. Obviously, he's going to be our biggest focus on getting him signed. He has the highest bonus demand, so we're going to try to work with him. We tried already with Aiden Grant to sign him. He declined what he was asking for, which is very, very interesting. But now that they moved the draft to the correct date, now we have the All-Star break right now, but pretty uneventful for us because we do not have many All-Stars. Our lone All-Star coming into this break may only be Ramel Tapia, who is one of the best left fielders, or Eric Hosmer. It ends up being Eric Hosmer. Eric Hosmer makes the squad. He's hitting about 300 on the year. or actually he was hitting 300 on the year. He's hitting 262. Raimel Tapia is hitting about 300. I'm surprised that Tapia didn't make it over Hosmer, but Hosmer's got a bigger name to him, and he's been an all-star before. And we'll see what he can do here in this game. He is a defensive first baseman. He's obviously won 3 Gold Gloves at first base, and here he gets an opportunity maybe to make his last all-star game of his career, facing Devin Williams of the Brewers. He gets one over the middle of the plate, and his only at-bat will be a fly out to dead center, and that's it. That was our all-star weekend here for the Arrows, and this all-star game ends up being 1-0. I mean, for baseball purists, that's a great game. For the new fans, they're probably disappointed. They just went to an all-star game and paid all that money for a ticket and saw a 1-0 game. Manny Machado gets the MVP in this game, and pretty uneventful there for the all-star weekend, to be honest with you. Our AA team has a ton of all-stars. Pretty much everybody. Paolo Reyes ends up being an all-star, and he has progressed quite a bit. But the biggest surprise here is Tyrone Johnson. Not that he's an all-star, but he has risen to be our second B potential prospect in the organization. So we now officially have 2 B potential prospects. One is Connor Wiegman here, who is tearing it up at AA. I could very well move him up to AAA just to get him some AAA at-bats. I think I actually might do it. And then, Tyrone Johnson, 2 B potentials. Alex Matheny also makes it. I really like Matheny as a young outfielder in our organization. He's going to be a guy that can be very, very good in the future, but he's going to need a couple years in the minors. So that's going to do it here for this episode. Let me know what you guys think of the draft. I honestly was torn between Gonzalez and Quintana. I'm glad I went with Gonzalez because I know how good defensively he is, and our scouting department agrees. And as we start to scout him more, because we can still scout him as we're going through signing, we will reveal that he's probably going to move up in the draft ranks. He will still have a draft ranking to him that can change, or the guy's draft ranks could go down, so that could also be a possibility. So hit subscribe, hit that like button. Let me know what you guys think of the draft down below. Stay tuned. Let's get it. Let's go.
It's too easy. I've been there, done it, seen it. Boy, all that like Keenan. Still got crack, they fiendin'. Flow still hot like Phoenix. Shine so bright, I'm gleaming. This off top, I'm tweaking. Fresh out the rat like Neiman. And I'm still trying to fight my demons. Cause we all gotta act like Tina. That's why I gotta ride with the Nina. Outside, it's a war going on.